Raging Bull, 1980, stands as one of the most celebrated sports dramas in cinema history. But when people talk about Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro collaborations, they often focus on the incredible performances and stylistic flourishes without delving deeply into the gritty realities that shaped this film's production. Today, we're giving you a captivating deep dive, brimming with little-known tidbits, surprises, and insider scoops. We're heading back to the late 1970s and early 1980s to explore how real-life boxer Jake LaMotta's astonishing story influenced Scorsese, De Niro, Joe Pesci, and others to craft a timeless masterpiece. These 30 facts are designed to give you an unfiltered, behind-the-curtain look at how Raging Bull pushed physical, emotional, and cinematic boundaries, and why its impact has never faded. Get ready for a journey through broken ribs, last-minute casting miracles, unusual sound design, and the intense personal revelations that turned Raging Bull into a film revered for its brutal honesty. Buckle up for these fascinating insights that reveal just how astonishingly layered this film truly is, and prepare to experience the story of Jake LaMotta in a whole new light. Jake LaMotta's realization. The real Jake LaMotta had an emotional epiphany when he first saw Raging Bull. As soon as the credits rolled, he turned to his ex-wife Vicky and, with a trembling voice, asked if he had genuinely been as vicious, angry, and uncontrolled as Robert De Niro's portrayal suggested. Her candid response, "You were worse," hit him even harder. This raw honesty underscores how deeply the film cut into the boxer's life, dredging up the unpleasant truths he might have avoided confronting for years. LaMotta's sense of shock was heightened by the film's unflinching depiction of domestic disputes, jealousy-driven outbursts, and the psychological toll of a man unable to see beyond his own rage. That LaMotta recognized his real-life reflection so painfully on screen reveals not just his own remorse, but also the astounding authenticity that both De Niro and Scorsese achieved. It's a rare moment in cinema history when the subject of a biographical film confronts his own demons in such a public way, illustrating the powerful potential of movies to serve as mirrors we might not be ready to face. De Niro's boxing training. Few actors commit to physical transformations as intensely as Robert De Niro, but his work on Raging Bull took method acting to an entirely new level. Rather than simply consulting a choreographer or learning a few routines, De Niro stepped directly into the ring under Jake LaMotta's personal tutelage. Over countless hours, LaMotta drilled him in proper boxing form, defensive maneuvers, and ring psychology. The training was so thorough that De Niro eventually fought in 3 official boxing matches in Brooklyn, impressively winning 2. LaMotta, ever the blunt observer, noted that De Niro had the raw grit to be a professional boxer if he had started earlier, praising his resilience and ability to withstand powerful blows. De Niro's intense preparation not only gave the film its iconic fight sequences, but also imbued his performance with an authenticity that transcended mere acting. Every punch, every stumble, and every breath in the ring felt real, grounded by an understanding of how a genuine boxer moves and thinks. De Niro's weight gain. Another testament to De Niro's relentless dedication came in the form of a 60-pound weight gain, transforming him from a lean, muscled fighter into an older, heavier Jake LaMotta who had retired from boxing. The shift was so dramatic and so rapid that it forced the entire production team to halt filming for 4 months just to accommodate the transformation. Martin Scorsese grew deeply concerned for De Niro's health during this period, feeling torn between his desire for cinematic authenticity and his responsibility toward his leading actor's well-being. Scorsese even contemplated pulling the plug on those scenes, worried that the rapid weight gain could do permanent damage. Despite the obvious health risks, De Niro pressed on, seeing this physical transformation as an extension of Jake LaMotta's journey. As you watch the film, you can practically see LaMotta's decline etched into De Niro's swollen features, an emotional resonance that would likely have been lost without this method approach. This commitment forever changed the conversation around method acting in Hollywood, setting a daunting precedent for future performers aiming for that same level of immersion. Scorsese's reluctance. Most people imagine Martin Scorsese taking on a boxing film with gusto, but in truth, he was hesitant, if not outright resistant, to direct Raging Bull. In the late 1970s, his interests leaned more towards interpersonal dramas than sports films, and boxing didn't pique his curiosity. Then came his near-fatal cocaine overdose in 1978, a harrowing incident that left him physically vulnerable and emotionally raw. During his hospital recovery, he and De Niro, longtime collaborators and friends, had a series of conversations in which the actor passionately pitched the idea of bringing Jake LaMotta's life to the screen. Scorsese still wasn't sold on boxing, but he felt an unexpected connection to LaMotta's self-destructive patterns, seeing parallels to his own brushes with mortality and destructive behavior. That personal link unlocked a fervor in Scorsese, shifting his perspective from dismissive to fully invested. Once he committed, the film became a cathartic outlet, an embodiment of the raw rage and vulnerability he had been grappling with in his own life. Black and white choice. While Raging Bull has become synonymous with its striking black and white cinematography, that choice wasn't just an artistic flourish. Scorsese wanted to distance his film from the usual saturation of color that characterized other boxing movies, notably Rocky II and The Main Event. The monochromatic palette also harkened back to the mood of the 1940s and 1950s, the era of Jake LaMotta's prime, creating a sense of documentary-like realism. By echoing the style of archival newsreels, Scorsese granted each frame an almost timeless gravitas. It was also a shrewd way to underline the stark moral contrasts in LaMotta's life, his raging jealousy and violent outbursts clashing against moments of genuine vulnerability. The absence of color stripped away any superficial glitz, leaving only the raw intensity of the narrative. Audiences felt plunged into a world that felt less cinematic and more like a historical record turned uncomfortably personal. Joe Pesci's casting luck. Joe Pesci's transition from near obscurity to stardom might never have happened if Robert De Niro hadn't spotted him in a modest, low-budget film called The Death Collector, 1976. At the time, Pesci was on the brink of leaving acting altogether, surviving on odd jobs and seeing no clear path forward in Hollywood. Intrigued by his performance, De Niro brought Pesci's name to Scorsese's attention. During the audition, Pesci delivered an intensity and authentic streetwise energy that immediately felt right for Joey LaMotta, Jake's brother and manager. The undercurrent of desperation and loyalty that Pesci exuded mirrored the complicated bond between the LaMotta siblings. That single stroke of luck led to Pesci's casting, catapulting him toward an illustrious career that would eventually include Goodfellas, Casino, and so many other iconic roles. Raging Bull thus became both a second chance for Pesci and a testament to De Niro's uncanny eye for untapped talent. Cathy Moriarty's debut. Picture a 19-year-old woman, virtually unknown, suddenly thrust into the whirlwind of a Martin Scorsese production alongside Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. That was Cathy Moriarty. Joe Pesci knew her casually from a local disco and suggested she'd be perfect for the role of Vicky LaMotta. Despite her inexperience, Moriarty's screen test showcased a confident but quietly potent presence that nobody could ignore. Scorsese took a chance and, after just one reading, cast her. On set, she had to navigate explicit confrontations, emotionally draining scenes, and a script that delved into domestic strife, all without a safety net of prior film work. Her remarkable performance, capturing Vicky's complexity, her allure, her resilience, her moments of terror, felt genuinely lived in, a testament to Moriarty's innate ability to convey layers of vulnerability and strength. For a first-time actress, the result was a tour de force that anchored the film's emotional storyline and garnered critical recognition, proving that sometimes a bold casting risk pays off in unforgettable ways. Broken Rib Incident. In a film as physically intense as Raging Bull, on-set injuries can be inevitable. But when De Niro and Pesci were shooting a sparring scene, even the production crew was startled by the abrupt brutality of what happened. A single well-placed, or rather misplaced, blow from De Niro landed squarely in Pesci's ribcage, fracturing one of his ribs. The audible "oof" that Pesci let out was so raw and so genuine that it ended up in the final cut, lending a visceral realism to the fight sequence. Though injuries are never ideal, moments like this illustrate the level of physical commitment both actors poured into their characters. The bruises and broken bones they sustained underscored the punishing world of boxing, where pain and resilience define the sport. For Pesci, it was one more example of how stepping into the ring with De Niro meant stepping entirely out of your comfort zone, and for viewers, it remains an indelible moment that captures the grit of Raging Bull. Choreographed fights. While Raging Bull is remembered for its raw, bone-crunching fight scenes, these sequences were meticulously choreographed over a strenuous 6-week schedule for what ultimately amounted to about 10 minutes of on-screen boxing. Martin Scorsese conceived each fight as a choreographed dance, complete with storyboards showing every jab, hook, and uppercut. That sense of dance-like precision becomes evident in the cinematic techniques used. Slow-motion shots that highlight the ripple of muscles at impact, amplified sound effects that mimic the ferocity of wild animals, and camera angles that shift from the ring to the roaring crowd. By approaching the fights as if they were choreographed ballets of violence, Scorsese highlighted the psychological depth within each bout, Jake's paranoia, fear, rage, and longing for redemption. Despite lasting only minutes on screen, these battles feel like a lifetime's worth of struggle for the characters, an emotional and physical crucible that never lets the audience breathe easily. Vicky's Florida visit. Robert De Niro is known for going to great lengths to understand his characters, and for Raging Bull, one of his key research stops was a trip to Florida to meet the real Jake LaMotta in 1978. There, he immersed himself in her memories, watching black-and-white home movies that captured fragments of her life with Jake. Moments of family tenderness punctuated by shadows of tension. So authentic were these private films that De Niro and Scorsese later recreated parts of them almost shot for shot. The idea was to capture not just visual authenticity, but the emotional truth of Vicky's experiences, her sense of being both enamored with Jake's charisma and fearful of his volatile temperament. By integrating these glimpses of domestic reality into the film, audiences got an unvarnished look at the personal dynamics that fueled LaMotta's self-destruction. It is a prime example of how Raging Bull deftly balances fact and cinematic craft to present a story that feels intimate, dangerous, and heartbreakingly real. Scorsese's illness. Mid-production chaos is stressful enough, but imagine your director suddenly falling ill and unable to shoot a critical scene. That's exactly what happened to Martin Scorsese while filming the rooftop wedding scene. In an unexpected twist, Scorsese's father, Charles, stepped in and directed it on his behalf. This family moment underscores how personal the project was for Scorsese. He didn't just see it as a job, It was a deeply involved labor of love, with friends and relatives stepping up when needed. While it's easy to overlook the wedding scene among the film's more explosive moments, it represents a snapshot of fleeting happiness amid the underlying turmoil of Jake's world. And it's also a testament to the collaborative spirit on set, where even health issues couldn't halt the film's progress. Slow motion technique. One of the most striking stylistic choices in Raging Bull is the extensive use of slow motion, especially during moments of psychological tension. Scorsese employed rates of 30 or 36 frames per second to stretch time and force the audience's attention to every detail. Jake's twitch of jealousy, the suspicious glance of Vicky toward another man, or the sweaty breath in the corner of a boxing ring. This subtle manipulation of speed amplifies LaMotta's paranoia, making every second feel loaded with potential violence. When you watch these slow-motion shots, it's as though you're stepping directly into Jake's warped perception, sharing in his suspicions and dread. This layered approach to cinematography transforms what could have been straightforward scenes into hypnotic studies of a man who sees treachery lurking around every corner. Sound design complexity. Raging Bull's auditory landscape is more intricate than you might suspect at first blush. Sound designer Frank Warner spent half a year crafting and mixing the various sound effects, punch impacts, camera shutters, flashbulbs, so they would meld seamlessly into the tapestry of Dolby stereo. During the boxing scenes, the roars of the crowd and the thud of gloves colliding with flesh sometimes bleed into animalistic growls. The intention was to mirror the bestial nature of the fights, stripping away the sanitized ambiance you might expect from a sports film. But Warner also faced a challenge, balancing these heightened audio moments with quieter, dialogue-heavy scenes at home or in nightclubs. The result is an oral roller coaster where each fight feels epic, but the hush of domestic life rings with equal intensity, highlighting the dualities in Jake's existence. Thelma Schoonmaker's editing. The film's sharp, cohesive narrative owes a huge debt to Thelma Schoonmaker, whose editing work earned her an Oscar. Prior to settling on the flashback structure we see in the final product, the filmmakers experimented with an opening that placed Jake LaMotta's nightclub act front and center. However, they soon found that focusing on one pivotal timeline allowed for a more intense emotional connection, cutting through distractions and zeroing in on LaMotta's tormented psyche. Schoonmaker's editing is a masterclass in rhythmic flow. The pacing in the boxing matches feels suffocatingly tight, while domestic scenes are drawn out just enough to let tension simmer. Her creative instincts ensured that every cut served the story's emotional core, driving home the tragedy of a man trapped in a vicious cycle of anger and regret. Distribution struggles. One might assume that with Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro attached, studios would be clambering over each other to distribute Raging Bull. Surprisingly, that wasn't the case. United Artists, initially expected to handle the film, got cold feet, leading to a disheartening round of rejections from other major studios. Producing team Robert Chartoff and Irwin Winkler had to mount an aggressive campaign to ensure Raging Bull even saw the light of day. By that point, Scorsese referred to it as his Hollywood swan song, convinced that if audiences and studios didn't support this project, he might be done with mainstream filmmaking. The film's eventual release, though not initially triumphant, proved that sometimes passion and persistence can conquer commercial skepticism. Over the years, it would evolve from a box office question mark into a cinematic legend, justifying every ounce of effort it took to get it on screens. Mixed initial reception. Even though Raging Bull is revered as a masterpiece today, its arrival on November 14, 1980, was met with a mix of awe, discomfort, and outright criticism. Moviegoers who anticipated a typical sports movie, perhaps something akin to Rocky, were taken aback by the brutal intensity and unrelenting violence, both physical and emotional. Critics, too, were divided. Some found the film's depiction of Jake's volatility hard to stomach, while others hailed it as Scorsese's crowning achievement. Financially, it earned about $23.4 million against an $18 million budget, a lukewarm response in mainstream Hollywood terms. But great art often needs time to be fully appreciated, and over the next few years, Raging Bull's standing soared, eventually assuming its rightful place as a high point in American cinema. The initial ambivalence gradually faded into universal acclaim for its daring creativity and raw power. 8 Oscar nominations. At the 1981 Academy Awards, Raging Bull found itself tied with The Elephant Man for the most nominations, racking up 8 total nods. The film's unflinching performance by Robert De Niro earned him the Best Actor win, while Thelma Schoonmaker's razor-sharp editing also claimed a well-deserved trophy. Still, in a decision that stirred controversy, Raging Bull lost out on Best Picture to Ordinary People. While some critics saw this as a snub for one of the decade's most influential works, others argued it underscored the Academy's preference at the time for more traditional, family-focused dramas. Despite not taking home the Best Picture prize, the multiple nominations were a testament to the film's technical and artistic brilliance, officially cementing its standing among the most significant films of its era. National Film Registry. A decade after its release, in 1990, Raging Bull was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry, an honor that typically celebrates works deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. What made this induction even more impressive was that it happened at the film's first year of eligibility, a testament to how quickly it ascended into the pantheon of classic American cinema. The registry recognized not only the film's groundbreaking stylistic choices, but also its exploration of universal themes such as ambition, envy, self-sabotage, and the human capacity for transformation. In an era when sports dramas often tread predictable paths, Raging Bull stood out for its relentless introspection and Shakespearean scope, earning it a permanent place in America's cultural record. Joey LaMotta's lawsuit. The line between artistic interpretation and factual accuracy can blur in biographical films, which often leads to legal complications. In Raging Bull, certain actions originally attributed to Jake's friend Peter Savage were reassigned to Jake's brother, Joey LaMotta, for dramatic cohesion. When Joey learned the extent of his character's on-screen violence, like beating a mobster, he filed a lawsuit for defamation, claiming it falsified events and damaged his reputation. This legal wrangling spotlighted the delicate balance filmmakers must maintain between telling a compelling story and respecting the real lives involved. Although the case was eventually resolved, it serves as a reminder that creative license can sometimes ignite very real consequences off-screen, further demonstrating the passion and turmoil swirling around the project from inception to aftermath. Sharon Stone's audition. Before Kathy Moriarty clinched the role of Vicky LaMotta, a then-unknown Sharon Stone also auditioned, aiming to break into big-league cinema. Though she didn't secure the part, Stone left enough of an impression on both Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro that they would remember her years later. This Hollywood footnote came full circle in 1995 when Stone starred opposite De Niro in Scorsese's Casino, earning an Oscar nomination for her performance. While she missed out on playing Vicky, Stone's eventual collaboration with the duo became one of her most celebrated roles, proof that even an unsuccessful audition can sow seeds for future success if the talent stands out. LaMotta's technical role. Given that Raging Bull was based on Jake LaMotta's autobiography, it made perfect sense to bring the real boxer on board as a technical advisor. He wasn't just an onlooker. He actively shaped the fight choreography, offering insights into his boxing style, training routines, and the intangible mentality of a fighter determined to never give up. Yet while his guidance helped De Niro capture the moves with stunning authenticity, LaMotta later expressed some ambivalence about how accurately the film portrayed his personal life, particularly his role as a husband and father. It's a stark reminder that while sports expertise can be imparted, the emotional scars are harder to replicate on screen. For LaMotta, watching his flaws come alive in De Niro's performance was a double-edged sword, both a validation of his truth and a painful revelation of his darker impulses. Cutty-Sark dispute. Sometimes the most unexpected elements can spark controversy. Martin Scorsese threatened to withdraw his credit from the film if a specific whiskey brand, Cutty-Sark, wasn't obscured in one scene. Why? Because the logo's visibility in the background clashed with Scorsese's vision, potentially commercializing a moment he wanted to keep purely focused on the narrative. Although it might seem like a small quibble, the director's insistence on controlling every detail, down to a passing label, demonstrates how deeply involved he was in maintaining the film's aesthetic integrity. When you watch Raging Bull, every prop, costume, and brand cameo is deliberately chosen or omitted, a reflection of Scorsese's painstaking attention to detail and resistance to unplanned product placement. Michael Chapman's flashbulbs. Cinematographer Michael Chapman worked intimately with Scorsese to craft the film's visual identity, going so far as to don a black velour tracksuit and dash around the boxing ring with a camera during the opening sequence. He set off flashbulbs to mimic the frenzied ambiance of sports photographers, capturing the sweat and grit of each fight. This approach gave the ring scenes a quasi-documentary feel, adding to the film's sense of immediacy and pressure. It's a prime example of Chapman's resourceful techniques, finding ways to immerse viewers in the fight environment, letting them feel the electric jolt of a flashbulb, the heat of the crowd, and the swirling chaos that frames every punch thrown by Jake LaMotta. Scriptwriting. Timeline. Contrary to the impression that the script was meticulously drafted over years, Scorsese once claimed the final version took shape in just 2 weeks on the island of St. Martin. That might sound impossibly swift, but the reality is that the screenplay had been evolving through numerous drafts from multiple writers, including Paul Schrader and Mardik Martin, with Robert De Niro also offering creative input. When they finally decided to condense everything, the puzzle pieces snapped together quickly, shaped by intense brainstorming sessions and lingering debates. The frenetic energy behind that final push is palpable in the movie's tight dialogue and emotional urgency. Raging Bull's script isn't just about capturing LaMotta's story. It's also a testament to the ferocious collaborative spirit that can emerge when talented individuals race against the clock under a shared ambitious vision. Cerdan fight, accuracy. In the film's depiction of the pivotal 1949 bout where Jake LaMotta bested Marcel Cerdan to claim the middleweight title, Scorsese and team went to great lengths to recreate authentic details. Cerdan's real elbow injury made it into the choreography, a small but critical aspect reflecting how injuries can be both physically and mentally crippling during a high-stakes match. The TKO victory in the film mirrors historical fact, but the emotional undercurrents, the sense of triumph, relief, and the fleeting nature of success are dramatized for maximum effect. It shows Scorsese's determination to blend cinematic flair with historical legitimacy, letting audiences relive a legendary sports moment while never losing sight of the human drama at its core. Shakespeare dropped. Early script drafts included a scene where Jake LaMotta would recite lines from Shakespeare's Richard III during his nightclub act, an odd but real detail from LaMotta's later life, where he tried to elevate his stage persona by quoting the bard. However, legendary British director Michael Powell, who was consulted by Scorsese, found the idea so outlandish that he warned it might shatter the film's credibility. Ultimately, they scrapped it. Though historically accurate, the jarring inclusion of Shakespeare might have risked tonally derailing the film. This anecdote underscores how adaptations often rely on balancing truth with coherence, deciding which details enrich the story and which might inadvertently turn a profound drama into something verging on parody. Animal sounds in fights. If you've ever found yourself feeling a visceral jolt during the boxing sequences in Raging Bull, it's partly because sound designer Frank Warner integrated subtle layers of animal growls and roars beneath the traditional punching effects. The idea was to convey the primal ferocity and bestial rage that Jake LaMotta carried into the ring. Each strike resonates with a guttural intensity, reminding viewers that the violence unfolding is not just physical, but also deeply instinctual. This choice underscores how heightened realism in cinema often comes from bold, imaginative decisions, pushing the boundaries of what audiences expect to hear in a scene, thereby amplifying the film's psychological impact. 114 F-words. The gritty dialogue in Raging Bull laces the film with an unapologetic realism befitting Jake LaMotta's volatile environment. We hear the infamous F-word a staggering 114 times, a bold move back in 1980 when mainstream films were still more reserved about explicit language. Yet the profanity never feels gratuitous. It mirrors the rawness of LaMotta's world, from the harsh locker-room banter of boxing circles to the domestic explosions fueled by jealousy. This choice might have contributed to the film's initially divisive reception, but in retrospect, it's one of the elements that cements Raging Bull's authenticity, providing an undiluted look at how harsh words can cut as deeply as any punch. Cinema royalty visitors. During the film's editing phase, Martin Scorsese worked out of his apartment on 57th Street, turning his living space into a hub for cinematic luminaries. Directors like Nagisa Oshima, Sam Fuller, Werner Herzog, Jean-Luc Godard, and Sergio Leone all dropped by at different points. John Cassavetes, known for his improvisational approach to filmmaking, would swing by with pasta takeout from Patsy's, creating a relaxed environment where ideas flowed as freely as the wine. The presence of these legends under one roof underscores the cultural gravity of Raging Bull. Even in post-production, it was a magnet for creative powerhouses. You can almost imagine them trading notes, pulling late nights, and fueling each other's passion for groundbreaking cinema. Never Knocked Down, Myth. The film draws attention to the mythic claim that Jake LaMotta was never knocked down, a boast repeated by LaMotta himself in interviews and promotional material. However, as boxing record books confirm, he was actually knocked down by Danny Nardico in 1952, a fact conveniently left out of the film. This omission hints at Raging Bull's thematic tension between self-perception and truth. For LaMotta, the narrative of invincibility served as a shield against a world quick to dismiss him. By not dramatizing that knockdown, the film maintains the mystique around LaMotta's near-superhuman resilience, but it also reflects how stories can become legends when inconvenient facts are politely swept under the rug. It's a final reminder that what we see on screen is never the whole story, but rather a carefully crafted reflection of one man's complex life. These 30 insights pull back the curtain on the sheer audacity, emotional heft, and collaborative genius that birthed Raging Bull. It's a film that risked everything, physical well-being, reputations, and professional relationships, in the pursuit of brutal honesty. More than 4 decades later, its themes of redemption and self-destruction still resonate, reminding us that greatness often emerges from chaos. Whether you're a die-hard Scorsese devotee, a Robert De Niro admirer, or simply someone intrigued by the extremes artists go to for authenticity, Raging Bull remains a cornerstone of cinematic history. It's the searing portrait of a man battling himself in and out of the ring, etched into our collective memory through monochrome frames, thunderous punches, and the reverberating echoes of regret. Even as the credits roll, the questions it raises linger. How far will we push ourselves for art, for self-discovery, or for victory, and at what cost? In offering these deeply human struggles, Raging Bull ensures we continue wrestling with the same questions long after the final bell has rung.